Hey, it's Lebo. Today I've got a Harlem Globetrotters on tour. This game is going into an arcade in Hamilton, Ohio. It's an arcade called Pinball Garage. It's a really cool place. It's a fairly new arcade. They've got some incredible games there, and they're a growing arcade. This game actually came from the owner there, and he asked me to take a look at it and see about getting it fixed up, getting it running, and be able to put it out on the floor. So if everything goes right here in about a week, we'll have it up there. And so I'm anxious to have this one done. So let's get started. I'm going to take you through everything that we did on it. So when I first got this game, it wouldn't start up at all. The power supply actually wasn't supplying any voltage. This is the power supply / rectifier board, and it had several issues really kind of going on with it. First thing was that the connectors were really in pretty bad shape. One of them was pretty burnt up, really crispy. There have been several wires that had been cut off of it, and they were soldered on directly to just some test points. I'm sure that was done at some point just to try to milk it along instead of actually really repairing the connector. But the board had just had a number of issues. It was bad, and so the decision was just let's just replace the whole board, and I'm really glad we did. In addition to that, all three connectors at the bottom were all rebuilt. Obviously the wires that were soldered to the test points were disconnected, and new pins, new connector housings, and all three of the connectors were rebuilt, in addition to having a whole fresh new board. Once that was done, then we had a solid supply of voltage throughout the game. So moving from the power supply board, the next thing up to go figure out what was going on, I had to deal with the MPU board. When the game was turned on, now that we had a good power, what the board was actually doing, or what the game was doing, was that the whole booting process would go about halfway through and then it would just stop. I think it was flashing 3 or 4 flashes of this LED indicating where it was in that whole startup cycle. And it was probably a chip or even a socket, but rather than really dive in deep on the board, again, kind of for the same rationale with the rectifier board, since this game was going to go in an arcade where really needed it to be reliable, and just wanted to not have to worry about having an issue to where I have to go back and kind of go revisit it. We just decided to swap out this board with a whole fresh MPU board. And this one doesn't have batteries, it's got NVRAM on it, so that's another benefit, in addition to just being fresh with everything new on it. Once that was put in, the game totally came alive, and all else was good. The connections were fine. The connectors didn't need to be rebuilt. They're holding up just fine. So moving away from that MPU board, coming down to the two boards that are down at the bottom, just a couple things to mention there. So the board on the right is the sound board, and I had some issues with this. Not major issues, but I did have some issues. What would happen when you would have the game playing or starting up, and just throughout different times of the game, is that the tones that would be played, sometimes the pitch of the tones would just kind of go crazy, and instead of it just being a normal sound, it would just take off. And it seemed as if you wiggled some of these wires, that the problem would kind of come and go. So it really felt like that there was a loose connection, and there was, it appears, because I ended up rebuilding this connector and also reflowed all of the solder on the header that's on the board that this connector goes into. And after doing both of those, the problem seems to have completely gone away, and the sounds are fine now. So moving to the board over here, this is the light driver board, and it's originally designed to control all of the incandescent bulbs on the Playfield, really all the bulbs. And I'll be moving down to the Playfield here in a little bit to go over everything, but one thing just to go ahead and mention that was done was that we, like a lot of the games, will add LEDs to it. And for this generation of games, they're they have issues a little bit with LEDs. They'll flicker some, and it just has kind of a weird effect. Well, and a pretty easy way to get around that issue is to basically have a resistance across each bulb. It's basically in parallel with the bulb, such that when the voltage is low, it would just basically go across the resistor, and you effectively don't even see the LED really lighting up. And so a clean way to do this is to have these daughter cards that are on here. And so basically how it works is for each one of these 3 connectors, they're sending current to all of the LEDs, and there is an array of resistors on all 3 of them, and it's just a clean way to add basically a resistor to every single lamp. And it's just enough to where it's not really dimming out the lamp to where you see an effect where the lamp's any dimmer. It just eliminates the flicker issue. So it's a nice solution. There were no other issues on this board, so it made sense to just add those daughter cards instead of going after replacing the whole board. Some of the newer boards are designed where they handle both the LEDs and the incandescents just fine. The board in the upper right, that is the solenoid driver board, basically didn't even have to touch it. It was working fine, so I kind of go back to the whole rule of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in this case, I really did. I decided to just leave it alone. What wasn't anything that I felt like we really needed to do. Sometimes we'll replace capacitors, but you know, this one seems to be running fine. So what else is in the back? So if we go looking at the back of the board for the displays, the one thing that you will see is there are 5 the original displays, and they're all working. They weren't right at first, and the issue was basically just having to restroke the connections. I think one of them I did have to pull off and reflow solder on the connection, but that was fine. Other thing you may see, if you really look closely, you see there's some extra wires that are here. So I got a little creative, and in a few spots I thought that there was a little bit of light that was lacking. So I added in a few extra sockets, and this was to try to fill in some dead spots and make the game just look a little cooler. So I'm gonna close this up and take a look on the front side. Okay, so basically what you'll see that I've added in is that there was several orange lights. There's a few extras that weren't there before. They are warm white frosted bulbs scattered around the bottom, and actually a cool white, or natural white, I guess is really what it's called, for the top. Red, blue, and red, just to add to, in red over here on the side. That I think it goes underneath the shoot again and tilt lamps. But by adding that in, just a little subtle little improvements. Nothing too crazy. Didn't want to go put a big color bomb in it or anything, but I really kind of like how it turned out. It just has sort of a nice balance to it. So I guess from here I'm going to move down towards the playfield. Okay, so let's take a look at the playfield. All right, so to start out, took a lot of the parts off, cleaned everything up really nice, polished it, gave it a good waxing, and then started replacing some things. Put in, like I mentioned earlier, new bulbs. Underneath all of the colored inserts, I basically put a matched colored bulb to go with that. Except for the yellow ones, I just used a warm white. If I used a yellow bulb, it just tends to look too dim. But the green, used a green bulb there, red, used a red bulb there. This yellow insert actually used again, another warm white. And for this one, the 5X, I got a little creative, and instead of it just being white, I did put in a blue bulb. Over here on the side where you see where it says opens gate, that one's blue. And I tied in not tied in, I made this insert actually turn blue as well. So whenever you hit this target to open the gate and that bulb goes out, this one will light up also in blue, since it's a consistent color. It just sort of brings your attention to what's going on over there. All the plastics are brand new. They really needed it. The other ones were kind of washed out. Bumper caps, those are new. In fact, the bumpers are all new. Ended up rebuilding everything with that. The spinner faces, put new faces on those. The drop targets, those were not original, but they were working fine. They don't really look bad, and just kind of left it. I thought it was kind of a neat little design that's on there, so just left it. All the bands are the silicone bands from Titan. Really happy with how they've been performing, so definitely using those. The flippers were all rebuilt. They were just needing attention pretty bad, so they're running great now. I did mention again about the lights. One other thing that I just noticed that I would mention is the area down here was a little dark, so I went ahead and threw in just a little trough light just to balance it out. But I guess that is the majority of the playfield. I guess only one other thing was that there was some paint that was missing up in this area, and just carefully using an acrylic paint and then an acrylic clear, repaired that to where you don't really notice it. It's not the world's best job, but it's actually, it turned out pretty nice. It's underneath the Mylar that is underneath the pop bumpers that are on both these sides. Both sides actually got a little bit of repair, so having that Mylar that's there now actually should really prevent any issues with that going forward. So on the front of the cabinet, just a couple things I mentioned. I did rebuild the whole the ball shooter, so it's got a new barrel spring, a new spring inside. The handle was just polished out. Didn't replace it, but just polished it because it was looking kind of rusty. I don't even know that I could get a new one of those, but it turned out just fine. The base is fine. The other thing I mentioned is the coin door, and oh my goodness, so as I mentioned before, this one is going into an arcade, so it needs to run tokens. Now, I had never really dealt with coin mechs before, so that's something kind of new for me. All the games I've worked on in the past were for my own here at home or for some other folks, and again, they were all just home use only. So this one was the first one for me that needed to run on tokens. And the coin door that it had on here, it seemed as if it was very well designed for being just a home use only coin door. And it may be that I just don't know that Bally made a home use coin door. I want to say that maybe they did. I thought I came across some mention of that somewhere, or at least it sort of suggested it. But that was the situation on this door. It didn't have, there was no place here to put coins in. The button to return your coins, that was actually just bolted in to where you couldn't push it or anything. I think it went all the way down. It was just screwed down in place. It was really kind of strange. The coin return hole here just had a piece of metal with a couple rivet holes, and on the inside, none of the hardware that would actually hold the coin mix was there. The bulbs were not there. A lot of the wiring was missing. The only thing that was there was the actual switch to be able to go do tests and whatnot. And it wasn't even located here. It was I guess mounted down here in this proximity. But everything was done pretty cleanly. So it really kind of felt like, hey, this may have been a factory job or some kind of an option. So what I had to do is get all the parts to go rebuild this and make it work. Or in my case, I actually found on eBay a replacement coin door, and it wasn't exactly the one for this game. There was maybe a couple wires missing or extra wires that really were not needed. But it worked, and actually between the two coin doors, I was basically able to kind of Frankenstein it in to where I got one good coin door. So I actually kept the skin of the original because it was better than the one that I bought on eBay, and I put a new decal on the front, and I think all these slots here came from the old door. All the wiring came from the eBay doors. What I meant to say, the sockets. But most importantly, the all the framework to actually hold the coin mechs. So also to mention about the coin mechs, when I put these coin mechs in, these are the ones that are going to be used in the arcade. Actually came from the arcade. And when I first put a quarter in to test it out, the quarter worked fine, but this arcade's running on tokens. So when I ran a token in, the token was getting caught. And where it was getting caught is at the bottom part of these chutes, the little opening where it opens in towards the actual coin mechanism. It needed to be opened up just a tiny little bit. There's a little bit of metal that was just sort of ground out just to give it a little bit more clearance to allow the token. Otherwise, it was just getting caught. After doing that, it's been working great. So these two chutes are both working just fine. So one thing that I may need to change, just depending on how the arcade owner wants to set things up, is right now it says 1 play, 1 quarter, 3 plays, 2 quarters. And I don't know if the owner's going to want to set it up for just a single play for a single token, or 2 tokens for a single play. But right now I actually do have it set up for 2 tokens for a single play. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. Oh, already. These 2 flippers on the belt, they can really get you if you're not careful. You want to cradle that ball. Actually, you just tend to want to cradle the ball with a little flipper. And that's bad news. Every time it just will want to roll between the 2. One of the objectives of the game is you're trying to spell globe, which you can do by landing the ball in the saucer at the top. It also, whenever you hit the stand-up targets, that can spot you a letter in globe. It doesn't always do it. There are times I think that it doesn't, but the G is the only one left that I need to do. Of course, I've got it set for 5 ball. Oh! All right, here comes the last ball. No, and that's it. Oh, got a match. So anyways, that about wraps it up. Look for this game, hopefully, if you're in the area up in Hamilton, Ohio. Again, it's Pinball Garage, so hopefully you'll get to check it out and enjoy playing it.